Good morning. This is Miss Cooper. Just wanted to give you your weekly review. We covered chapter 4 this week, and we were dealing with the rise of the Industrial Revolution. We were discussing the social, geographic, economic, and political implications that resulted from it. Our standards were RH 9.1, 9.4, 9.2, and 9.3. We've done a lot of bell ringers this week, and your quiz is going to be primarily composed of those bell ringers and exit tickets. So the passages that were there, I want you to be sure that you're remembering those things, and even the one that you have today. Make sure you keep up with those questions. Make sure you understood that passage. But the first bell ringers passage dealt with the request to King George. So you'll be asked questions about that passage. Remember, we summed that passage up. King George was the king in England at the time when this primary source was documented. And the colony of Georgia was asking that king for permission to import and use black slaves. Okay, that was the issue about creating a new industry. Okay, the slave industry was totally a money-making mechanism, and as inhumane as it was, this was something that people were making a lot of money off of because they had these free laborers and they were developing these products and they were coming up with new ways to make these products faster and cheaper and be able to transport them to other people and make money. Okay, so slavery comes into this whole chapter by means of the new industry. Okay, this Atlantic slave trade was an actual industry, a business, and it's terrible to think of it that way, but that's what it was. And that first bell ringer discussed that with that request from the colony at the time. It was the colony of Georgia requesting permission to import and use these slaves. There were some restrictions in that passage. I want to make sure you go back and read it and find out what was the restriction. What were the restrictions? What did they say you could do or you couldn't do if you were going to maintain a plantation or operate using slave labor? They set that up. And then the next bell ringer that you had from lesson 2. Let's see, I hope I've got it. Make sure. I thought I had all these up here. Somebody came in my room. I'll pull something that I do have. Hold on. So the lesson 2, at least the exit ticket information, came from letters from England from Don Manuel Alvarez Esparilla. And they were pretty much talking about the cotton factories and how many people were sometimes blind to or willfully ignorant of the destructive impact it had on those employed by the factories. So basically, this one summed up this whole children working in the factories, people working around the clock, harsh working conditions. The other passage dealt with the wealth of nations. It was written in 1776 by Adam Smith, and that was a philosopher and economic theorist from Scotland. He wanted to discuss the commerce society as he saw it. He thought that the way a society made its profits had important implications for the people, including moral implications. At the time, concern grew over the need for affordable food for growing but impoverished population. He highlights the important role that the potato, a new crop bought from the Americas, could play in Britain. That whole passage dealt with the fact that the potato is a good plant and the potato is cheap to grow and the potato will feed a whole lot of people. That was what that whole passage was dealing with. So go back and reread that and make sure you're comfortable and familiar with that one. And then there was an exile rights of Italy from France. So we had, let me go back to the bell. I thought there was a bell ringer for it. well, anyway, I'm gonna look at, I'm gonna let you go back and look at that other, somebody came in and I don't have much time. I have to get this set up, so I do apologize that I didn't have all this ready for you already. But I basically want you to be reminded that all of your quizzes are comprised of the weekly material, okay? I'm talking about these things in class. I provided an outline, which I can talk to you more about this outline that I did provide that dealt with, okay, here's the one I was looking for. That other bell ringer was about the eyewitness account of the battle in the French Revolution. When the person saw it and the National Guard was neutral, but they had a bias. Okay, that's the other one I was looking for. Things on the outline, everything on this outline, anything on this outline can definitely be a quiz question. So you make sure that you're familiar with the causes of the Industrial Revolution, the names like Josiah Wedgwood and pottery and the mass production of it, the mechanization and the things that they were using, the inventions, the spinning jenny, the water frame, the use of the mule, what was happening with the iron industry, the names associated with the steam engine, Thomas Newcomb and James Watt, the railroads, Richard Trevithick and George Stephenson. Those were two important names that dealt with the railroad industry. The impact began with the new industrial cities and the rural environments, people that were enclosing off their land and doing scientific experiments, trying to find better ways to crop, better ways to harvest. Then the working conditions were so terrible, and laissez-faire was a concept that said let businesses do what businesses do, but they were having horrible working conditions for people who were working there, and children were working, and people were being beaten. It was terrible. So that was an issue. It impacted women because things were done at home where you can be with your children. Now everything's done in the factory, and you have to leave your children, or you bring your children to work, and they have to work and be beaten and all those kinds of things. Then it talked about people continuing to protest some laws, the Corn Laws in 1846, the Factory Act of 1833. Those were definitely things that are in that outline that I want you to be familiar with. The limits of industrialization outside of the West. Pay attention to what happened in Egypt. Pay attention to what happened in India. Okay, Britain goes in, and I want you to find out what happened with that. Okay, and then Britain and China. Definitely find out about that connection between Britain and China, because the Chinese population is growing quickly, and they're having some issues there, and Britain is really trying to get a trade market in that area. So that's what the outline was pretty much all about. And you have your exit tickets and you have your bell ringers that you should still have access to those links. If not, I'll make sure I send them to you. Your choice activities are going to be the same. You got a PowerPoint you can choose. You can choose to do a YouTube video. You can choose to create the timeline. Remember, I took pictures of the timeline and sent it to you, so you make sure you can see the sample of the timeline if you write it out. You can write it out or you can type it out, however you want to do it. Or you can do an essay. Okay, if you want to do an essay, I'm going to add another component, okay, for the compare contrast essay, or you can draw a graphic organizer and do a compare contrast. I'm also going to add a current event choice. A current event choice is going to be an essay that you'll get to write that deals with a current event. Any current event that's happening in world history today, you can write about that. And so that's gonna, it doesn't have to be compare contrast, it'll be explanatory, okay? And it needs to be 3 to 5 paragraphs. So then you'll have a study guide, okay? Your study guide will cover your chapter 1 stuff, it'll cover your chapter 2 stuff, it's gonna cover your chapter 3 stuff, and all the things that I just mentioned with chapter 4, dealing with the Industrial Revolution, okay? Starting with those documents on the bell ringers and the exit tickets, using that outline, making sure you are familiar with those names and those laws. Those are the things that you're going to be quizzed on tomorrow. So hopefully you have got an opportunity to write at least 3 to 5 facts on this video. I'm going to provide some additional videos for you to look at and review and make sure that you follow the instructions on your instruction sheet. Email me if you have questions, tjcooper@jmcss.org, or that 901 number that I have been sharing with you, so you make sure that you use that if you cannot get me your work any other way. Thank you for being here, and peace and love until next time.